I'm riding every major coaster at an entire theme park chain, from some crazy wooden coasters to the scariest ride I've ever been on, and even one of the world's best coasters at a tiny park you've probably never heard of, plus so much more, starting at Fun Spot Kissimmee with a wooden coaster that goes upside down. It starts by quickly climbing up the lift and turning around, letting me look down over the park and giving me a quick view of the Tower of Terror. I couldn't look for long though, as before I knew it, we were falling down the drop, lifting me from the seat as we plummeted to the ground, immediately rising up and shooting into that roll. For some reason, I was violently thrown forwards, and the train felt like we hit a brick wall as we started to roll over the station, flipping completely upside down and levitating me out of the seat for a moment before we snapped out of the roll and continued turning right up against the ground, pinning me to the side of the seat, then pushing me down as we rose up. Again, the train felt like we hit a wall, throwing me forwards and into the air at the same time with so much force I actually thought the train might have left the track. Of course it didn't, as I was dropped back into the seat, only to go flying again as we fell down another drop that turned into a turd. We hopped over a small hill, turned around, and dropped down another drop that lifted me into the lap bar, swerved our way over another hill, and twisted through a big turn that was taken super slowly and dangled me to the side of it before turning the other way and rising over a big hill that was also taken super slowly. We dipped down, rose up, and flew over a hill, launching me into the air, then rising up and snapping into a turn, popping me out of the seat as we turned around inside of the supports, climbing up, dropping down a small drop, and hitting the brakes.
Okay, that was actually pretty awesome. That was very rough, but it wasn't rough in like the traditional wooden coaster like shakiness. It was actually fairly smooth in that regard. It was rough in a way that I've never experienced before that also made the coaster more fun. Like it had that like twinge of danger to it that most coasters don't have. Like I'm sure it's extremely safe and I kind of liked it. It was pretty cool.
From there, I started heading over to the next coaster, but something caught my eye. This park is home to the world's tallest sky coaster, which stands 300 feet tall, and you have to ride facing straight down. Of course, I had to ride it, but I wasn't gonna ride it yet, not because I was scared, of course not, but because reasons. So I went over to the next coaster, Galaxy Spin, the park's Wild Mouse, which is my least favorite type of coaster, but fortunately this was a spinning version, so maybe it wouldn't be that bad. It starts with a slow lift, pulling me to the top and to the infamous Wild Mouse turns. I hoped that the spinning would be unlocked from the start, but I quickly found out it wasn't as the train hit the first turn, painfully throwing me to the side. We went straight, then plowed through another one, and another. Then I blazed through some brakes, which are literally designed to slow the train down, but did nothing. Finally, we slammed into a little turn that quickly turned into a drop, lightly lifting me from the seat as we fell down, then quickly rose up into another small turn, throwing me to the side. We went straight through some more turned off brakes, violently turned, and plummeted down another decent drop, quickly rising up and popping over a small hill, throwing me airborne before we continued to climb up, shooting through another turn and going straight. As we hit the next turn, the car's spinning unlocked, but the first turn didn't really get me spinning. It basically just threw me forwards, but when I hit the next turn, the car started spinning, and this is when it actually started to get super fun. I was spinning insanely fast, then I hit a second turn just at the right angle to spin even faster, and now I was spinning more than nearly any other ride I've ever been on. But then it got even better as I hit another turn, which somehow made me spin like 5 times faster, spinning so fast I could feel my body being pinned against the wall like a rotor ride you'd find at a fair. It did slow down a bit after another turn, but before I knew it, I was being whipped around another turn at just the perfect angle to go back to spinning like a top. I hit a small turn which amplified the spinning even more somehow, went straight, then took a long turn, which out of nowhere became a sharp drop, throwing me from the seat. We twisted to the side, then hopped over a tiny hill, ejecting me into the air, and due to the spinning, catching me completely off guard. Finally, we rose up and hit the brakes, stopping the spinning and ending the best Wild Mouse I've ever been on. After that, I went to go over to the next coaster, which sadly hadn't opened for the day yet, so I decided to come back after I checked out the other park. See, Fun Spot is interesting because they have 2 different parks in the same area. One by Disney and Kissimmee, which is where I was at, and another literally across the street from Universal. By the way, this is a good time for me to mention that this video was made in collaboration with Fun Spot. They gave me permission to record on rides, which I really appreciate. However, I did pay for park admission myself, and Fun Spot does not have any say or control over any of the contents of this video. When I arrived in Orlando, I started off by riding their wooden coaster, which doesn't go upside down, but I was still super excited to ride it. It starts by giving me a great view of Universal. It's actually kind of crazy just how close to that park this place is. I couldn't look for long though as we fell down the drop, ripping me from the the seat, then snapping us to the side as we twisted to the ground, picking up a ton of speed, then whipping to the side, popping me into the air as we curved under the supports. We hopped up a small hill, lifting me into the lap bar, then quickly leveled off, pushing me into the seat as we rose up and over a bigger hill that unfortunately didn't really do much of anything. We dropped down, leveled off, then fell down another drop, this time ripping me from the seat. We shot up into a big turnaround, twisting down and flying over a big hill, floating me into the air. Then we hopped over another hill and another, both levitating me from the seat. Then we twisted to the side, rising up, swerving the other way, only to suddenly turn into a drop and throw me into the air. We ripped over another hill and turned to the side, blasting through the supports, popping over a little hill, twisting one way then the other, and rising up to hit the brakes, ending the ride.
I am blown away by how much that did. Like, it's not a particularly long ride. It's a bit shorter than I thought it was going to be before I got on, but it doesn't feel like a short ride because it just does so much. I will say though, I do think I prefer Mindblower. Like, this is far smoother than Mindblower. Like, it's night and day the smoothness difference, but Mindblower just felt so much more out of control because it felt like it was actually tearing itself apart while it was going. This just felt like a smooth wooden coaster.
From there, I went over to the coaster right next to it, Freedom Flyer, which is the park's kiddie coaster. But as you can clearly see, this wasn't your normal kiddie coaster. This is a family inverted coaster where you ride underneath the track, which looks super fun. It starts with a little drop, curving to the side and picking up a bit of speed before climbing back up over the path. We drop down and curve to the side, still over the path, before climbing up and slowly twisting, giving me some great views over the park and of the huge sky coaster here, which, despite being super tall, is still 50 feet shorter than the one I was going to be riding later. We curved the other way and spiraled down while going over a little lake, building up some good speed, then twisting the other way and shooting over the path. We hopped over the station and started spinning to the ground, picking up more and more speed before hitting the brakes, ending the ride. That was the last coaster in the park, but I couldn't leave until I tried the park's famous go-karts. There's a few tracks in the back of the park, but Commander looked to be by far the most popular one, so that's what I rode, and I ended up getting sat in the second place car, which meant as long as I didn't get past, I was guaranteed podium position. Unfortunately, within seconds of the race starting, I was already somehow getting past, but I had the entire race to catch back up, so I locked in and floored it, taking super tight turns, following a really good racing line, getting scared by my exhaust, and doing everything I could to at the very least stay tied with the people in first and second. Unfortunately, it turned out that they were just way better drivers than me, and I kept slipping further and further behind them. By the end of the first lap, I could barely even stinking see them, but I was still in third place, so it was fine. Until on the third lap, I noticed someone behind me that was getting dangerously close to passing me, so suddenly my goal became just trying to maintain my third place spot by any means necessary. I drove the best racing line of my life, sticking right up against the wall, taking turns so tight that I nearly spun out and staying in third place through the third lap, the fourth lap, the fifth lap, and just barely on the sixth lap, finishing the race in a very respectable third place. This was seriously so much fun. Going around and trying to have the fastest lap was insanely addicting. There's a lot more tracks too, some of which look kind of crazy, but unfortunately I only had time to do the one as I had a wrestling show that I was going to later that night on the other side of town. And while I'm there, we gotta talk about the third Fun Spot Park, Fun Spot Atlanta, which is just a little tiny park outside of Atlanta with an arcade, some kiddie rides, and the 7th highest rated coaster in the world, Airy Force One. It starts with a few small hills right out of the station, each one kind of chucking me from the seat, and within literally 5 seconds of the ride starting, it was amazing, and it was only about to get better from there as we started climbing up the super loud lift, which pulled us straight into one of the best drops I've ever experienced. I got ripped from my seat and stayed there for seconds as we plummeted to the ground, only to immediately shoot back up, twisting to the side, then whipping me the other way, simultaneously throwing me from the seat and to the side as we flipped upside down and dove to the ground, pushing me back into the seat as we shot forwards and over a little tiny hill that ripped me airborne. We rose back up and flipped into an insane stall, holding me upside down super far above the ground for what felt like ages. Then we snapped out of the stall and dropped down again, then flew up and into one of the craziest moments on any coaster. We rose up and started turning, but it was banked the wrong way, causing me to get ripped out of the seat with an unbelievable amount of force, and then just held there for like 5 straight seconds as we turned to the side and fell back to the ground. Almost immediately, we were shooting back up and over a little hill that chucked me into the air, and before I could process it, we climbed up even higher into a bigger hill that threw me into the lap bar with more force than any other point of the ride so far as we plunged back to the ground. Of course, I didn't even have a moment to catch my breath as we rocketed through a crazy roll, throwing me to the side as it turned into a turn, which itself turned into a wonky hill, ripping ripping me from the seat as we dipped down and twisted to the side through an extremely intense turn that caused me to start to gray out before it itself turned into a roll, throwing me to the side and continuing to turn as we rose up and into the coaster's insane finale, which, in my opinion, kinda goes too far. We flew over a little tiny hill, ejecting me into the air, then quickly leveling off and sending us into another tiny hill, and another, and another, and another, each throwing me into the lap bar with a painful amount of force over and over again. Finally, we fell down the last drop and rose up into the brakes, ending the absolutely absurd ride. Now, unfortunately, in some news that has come out of absolutely nowhere, this entire park has been announced to permanently shut down on August 2nd of this year. This is legitimately coming extremely out of nowhere as I am starting to record this right now. So, I don't really have anything prepared, but if you want to ride this coaster, you should come to the park now. This is an incredible ride, and I'm not trying to FOMO market you or anything. I don't know if this will be moved. Moving a ride by this manufacturer is legitimately unprecedented. It has never been done before, and while this is a very new ride that probably could be moved, I worry that it won't be able to. I really hope it reopens because this is one of my favorite coasters in the world, and I would be crushed not only if I never get to ride it again, but if so many people don't get a chance to ride it because it's only existed for like 3 years. Now, unfortunately, that also does mean that the park's other coaster, Hurricane, is also going to be shutting down. I didn't get a chance to ride that on this trip, but I did back in 2023, and this thing was a disaster in the best possible way. Back in Orlando, my wrestling show had ended, and thanks to the park being open till midnight, I still had time to go back to Kissimmee and ride the 2 rides that I hadn't been on yet, starting with the coaster that was closed earlier, Hurricane. It starts with a slow turn, giving me a quick chance to look out over this little side area of the park before diving down the big drop, violently snapping me to the side while we twisted right up against the ground. We shot back up and leveled off so violently that it launched me from the seat, and before I had a chance to react to that, we smashed through a small turn with as much grace as a broken shopping cart. It dropped down another drop and brutally twisted through another super fast turn right up against the ground, shaking me around before forcefully rising up and into another small turn, which again threw me around as it lined up with another small drop, dipping down, rising up, and blasting through another turn. I hopped over a small hill that somehow threw me from the seat, then hit another turn, which, like all the other ones, was crazy. Finally, after a small drop and another turn, it hit the brakes, ending one of the funniest coasters I've ever been on.
That thing felt like it didn't want to turn, but it was being contractually obligated to turn. That is kind of the perfect example of a coaster that would be really lame if it wasn't janky, but because it's incredibly janky, it makes it very fun.
Finally, after all of that, all that was left to do was to ride the world's tallest sky coaster, which stands 300 feet tall and is the most intimidating ride I have ever done. I normally don't get freaked out by rides anymore, but as I was getting strapped into the harness, I was starting to panic, and I only got more and more scared as I walked out underneath it, which is when it really sunk in what I was about to do. I was in way too deep to back out though, so I got into the basket, stepped onto the bar, and then got dropped face first right next to the floor of the basket. Then I slowly started ascending, and if I was scared suiting up or walking to the ride, it was nothing compared to just how freaked out I was as I watched the ground slowly getting further and further away.
Well, I'm gonna do the YouTuber thing. You ready for this? If you're appreciating this, maybe click that subscribe button. In all seriousness, the fact that I'm in a position to be able to film on this right now is unbelievable to me and something I thought I would never achieve. So thank you to the Fun Spot people, and thank you even more to every single one of you who's ever liked or commented or even watched the video. I legitimately feel like I'm about to throw up.
I have never in my entire life been more scared on a ride.
We are not even halfway. Oh my God.
Finally, after climbing up for what felt like an eternity but was only about a minute, I'd reached the top. The view was unbelievable, but I was in no position to take it in as, to be honest, I was so scared I was struggling to breathe. Finally, I heard a voice counting me down over the speakers, and
Holy good God. What? Oh my God.
the drop was insane, and unlike anything else I've ever experienced before. For the first part of it, I was hurtling towards the ground headfirst in what felt like a complete freefall. Then the cords engaged, and I swung forwards, and the feeling of acceleration and speed that this gave was unearthly. Like, it doesn't feel like it should be real. Then I started rocking back and forth, and for the first time of really the entire ride, I could actually take in the view, feel the wind in my face, and stick out my arms. I swung back and forth a few times, then I had to grab onto this ring, which stopped me and also ended the ride.
I have literally been around the world to ride theme park rides. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, this is the scariest ride I've ever been on. I'm speechless. I know it might not sound like I'm terribly hype. I know I've gotten off of coasters and been more hype and had more things to say. I am, for the first time in my YouTube career, speechless. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to sum that up. I don't know if any ride that I will ever ride will top that in terms of scariness.
Now, if you enjoyed this video, consider checking out this one from the world's biggest theme park.